to friends at home. Greetings to friends at home. As long as there's no adult supervision in church today, I wanted to be real about the moment. This is a time of change, isn't it? Some of us insist that we don't like change, and I think that's just a fib. It's a bad habit that people have. Everybody likes change. We do. How many people were born here in Santa Fe? Nobody. If you didn't like change, well, you are?
I was almost born.
Okay, close enough? Close enough.
My parents decided to leave into California, however.
Okay, great. Obviously you like change. 1,000 years ago, that would never happen. Maybe 100 years ago, that would have never happened. My grandparents, all four grandparents were born in Manhattan Island in New York City in the 1890s. And the entire rest of the family grew up 10 miles from where they were born. But now, I have one sister in Cape Cod, one sister in South Bend, Indiana, a brother in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm here in Santa Fe, and my mom is in Florida. Everybody likes change. It's the way we live. And at some point, I think it serves us well to admit that and to realize that all things are not only temporary and tentative, but even ephemeral. Life can go like that. So while you're here, why not have an experience that you might rely on your faith to move you forward in, or you might rely on boldness to help you keep moving forward and claiming your own identity. But you know, I learned a long time ago. Anybody from New York City by any chance? No. Well, they have subways in New York. Yeah, and the subways are over 100 years old at this point. And if you live in New York, you know when you're riding the subway, you have to keep your knees flexed. If you lock your knees, you're going to go through the whole ride going. You keep your knees flexed. And I think that's great advice for any community, any job we may have, any phase of life we're in, to keep our knees easy so it is not a jarring, hellish experience. But it's a ride and we get to where we want to go. You, the church, are finding yourself in transition right now. That can be a vulnerable place. It can be exciting. It can be exhilarating. It can be maddening and hurtful as well. No doubt there are people that are hurt because things have changed. But again, in our experiences, everything changes, and it changes so quickly when you look at it in retrospect. I came into this teaching 40 years ago. 40 years ago. And that church started in a small room, smaller than this, in a Masonic temple in Los Angeles, California. And then it got a little bigger, and then it got a little bigger, and then it got really big, and then it got a little smaller. And then when the founding pastor died, he asked me to take over as senior minister, which I had the privilege of doing. And now it's really, really small. The wheel is always turning. I bet there have been a lot of iterations of this ministry too. I bet you Nicola probably started in a small room at the Masonic Temple because most religious science churches always did. And then it probably got a little bigger. I don't know the history of the church, But I bet it got a little bigger and it got a little bigger, and then you probably had a great building, and then you probably don't have the building anymore. And it got a little smaller, and here you are at the threshold of your possibilities yet again. Yet again. And so what it's going to be is up to you. I think Walter and I have a mutual friend in Dr. Jim Lockhart. Do you know Dr. Jim? Okay. And he is a remarkable guy. But he talks about liminal space. And Walter's laughing, so he's heard the routine, I guess. You know, liminal space is when you're no longer what you used to be, but you're not what you're going to be yet. And here's a vulgar illustration of what that is. When I retired from my pulpit ministry in Nashville, Tennessee, 2.5 years ago, and the first year of being retired was very disoriented, and that didn't work out, so I went back to work, and I've been working, serving churches part-time since then. But I discovered YouTube, which for some reason I hadn't really gotten into yet. So one of the things I discovered were these brothers that have a lobster boat in Maine, and they do lobster harvesting. And being sort of from Cape Cod, it's home turf. Now, lobsters, as you know, and crabs, and other kinds of shellfish, there comes a moment that if they don't get out of their shell, they will die. And it's during that time, it's the only time that a lobster is vulnerable. Because without a shell, it's somebody else's lunch. Most of them survive, and they develop a new shell, and they continue to grow. And so the process goes on and on and on. And frankly, I think that's with our lives are the same way. And churches have been the same ever since. I know you're people that like change also, because who here was born into religious science? Oh, nobody. And you made a brave choice at some point. Now, I had a church in Nashville, Tennessee, and believe me, if you stop going to a Baptist church and you show up at a New Thought church, you're in a world of hurt. Most of the folks in my church in Nashville, their families would not speak to them. And sadly, when some of them passed away, they were not allowed to have a funeral at their church. They were buried back in the Baptist church. You made a brave choice to go searching for something without a shell, without protection, without community support. Because also, nobody gets social points for being in religious science. But we know it's where we hear the truth, right? We know that it's right for us. And that was a bold moment in your life. And whatever is happening now has got to be a daring, bold moment for this community, too. Because one thing that I know for sure is that, the shape, the fashion, the style of worship changes a lot, unless you're in something that is profoundly traditional, and that would be the spiritual practice, like in a very traditional Buddhist practice, very traditional Jewish practice, very traditional Catholic practice. If you don't want things to change, then go there for church. But if that's not your spiritual path, expect change. Master change. Get good at it. Welcome it. And find yourself at the threshold of something new and something bold and something rich. I was looking at the New York Times this morning, and there was a really a charming little piece about advice about fathering from young dads. Nobody was over 45 years old who put a piece in here. And I loved, this is the one that I wanted to share with you to do. A young gentleman from Portland, Oregon writes his tip for being a good dad. He says, on the day they leave for college, you will ask yourself, have I taught them how to make good decisions? This was shared by a close friend a few years ahead of me in parenting journey, and I think about it almost every day. Not having been called by the Holy Spirit to raise children in this lifetime, church is a place where I experience deep paternal feelings. I want so much for you. I want so much for us. I hope that as the work we're doing here, we're teaching you how to make good decisions. That's the only thing that matters. Doesn't matter what happens when we pass away. I was raised Catholic, and it was fun to be Catholic in the 1950s in New York area. You know, it was mostly Irish and Italian, and, you know, as an altar boy, it was great. I don't have an axe to grind about it. But, you know, the thing about being that is that this is a vale of tears that we live in, and to offer up every challenge for the poor souls in purgatory. And it's like, what? No. Whatever happens on the other side, obviously we're not meant to know, or we would all know. And when we get to the other shore, we'll know everything we need to know about it. So until that moment, I want to be here powerfully and graciously and effectively. I want to be serving my health and wholeness so I can be a blessing to all people everywhere. And as I walk forward, my only thing is I don't want to diminish the experience of any other life force as I serve my health and wholeness. So, you know, that kind of framing has worked well for me personally. And how do I make decisions? Our teaching teaches us how to make good decisions. And our practice is about calling this to mind. Again, not regularly, on a minute-by-minute basis, until it becomes your way of being. I don't want to say automatic pilot, because then that would mean that we're not fully conscious of the choices that we're making, right? I want to be fully conscious of all the choices that we're making. For me, the point of our philosophy is so that we can be fully present in every moment and reap what gift there is in any experience, no matter where I am, no matter who is the senior spiritual leader at whatever church I am at the minute. It really is immaterial. As long as they're telling the truth. I read something a long time ago about teachers. And it was saying that, you know, the truth is like a torch. It is an eternal flame. It does not go out. We know that the perennial wisdom, the perennial philosophy has been intact and unchanged for 3,000 years. The teachings of Dr. Holmes are no different than what's in the Upanishads, the Dhammapada, the teachings of Jesus, or whatever. It's no different. This is what the torch is. But for the teaching to be successful, that torch must be passed from one enthusiastic person to the next to keep it high, so you can see it, so you can be benefited by its light. So it doesn't really matter who the person is, but that there is somebody that is willing to pick up the torch and to keep it high so that it will shine a light on your path. Dr. Howard Thurman was a mentor to Dr. king. And he wrote, "Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, so that in good times or in tempests I might remember that to which my life is devoted. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve." Those moments of my high resolve that allow me, in good times or in tempests, to make sound choices, to make good decisions, are the essence of what this teaching really is all about. What is the nature of God? God is self-evident as creation. Self-evident, self-existent, it's a natural harmonic, it's a mutually beneficial process that creates the cosmos, which is why it's self-sustaining. The essence of this teaching is that you're the thing itself. You ever heard that one? You're the thing itself, which I don't know, we don't talk about this much. That comes from Nietzsche. This is das Ding in sich, the thing itself. You're it, baby. You know, Superman ain't coming. Batman ain't coming. James Bond's not going to bail you out. It's up to us individually, all the time. And you can do it. The powers that you have, Emerson says, the powers that you have are wholly sufficient to the individual's needs. You've got an operating system with all the apps you need to function in your life as you. Here's another truth. You're the primary creative force in your own life. Do things happen to us? Yes, they happen to us. Does our consciousness cause everything to happen to us? No. I think that's not an appropriate thing to say. We used to in old-fashioned religious science. And I don't ever find any case where I've ever heard that it was productive or kind to say that. It's like saying, what was in the dinosaurs' consciousness that caused them to go extinct? It's ridiculous. But for about 82% of your life, yeah, it's you. It's what you expect. It's what you believe. It's the faith that you hold and push forward. It's what you expect. It's how you act. And when things do happen to us, challenge, sorrow, loss, and even death of loved ones, how we react to that is the only thing that truly matters. Here's a truth from Dr. Holmes in my favorite little book, which is this thing called You. Life will be to you what you are to it. Having been in the South for a long time, I have all kinds of little expressions which are so nice to use when you're a preacher. And it's like, honey, I ain't got no lie to tell you. Life will be to you what you are to it. It's no more complicated than that. There isn't any spiritual teaching that's more mysterious, that's more arcane, that's more whatever. But this is a cosmos of cause and effect. If we are physically incarnated, then cause and effect is the basic operating system. And what we are to life, we can expect in kind to receive that back. That will be our experience over the long run. And I'm in this for the long run. Even when I was brand new to New Thought, there was a lot of literature from the early 1900s, which was kind of charming in some ways. But I met a man on the street and I spoke the word of prosperity for him, and there was $1,000 at all. Over the long run, are you willing to assume responsibility for your life? Are you willing, for those of you that are committed? And I am committed to this ministry. I'm traveling an awful lot this summer, but I will be here every Sunday when I'm not sick or out of town. That is my pledge. Well, because my spiritual practice is still really, really important to me. And I'm 71. Life is ephemeral. I have declared that this next 10 years, and I'm not saying it's over in 10 years, but this next 10 years is, I go decade by decade. It's going to be the most creative time of my life. That is my intention, and that's the foundation that I am building now. I'm doing something about it. I'm not waiting for something to happen to me. My poor therapist, in the early 80s, I had a therapist. And, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they listen to the same boring, sad stories week after week. But here I was, loaded with magical thinking, and it was before I found religious science. And I said, I just keep waiting for something kind of serendipitous to show up in my life so I'll know what to do. And my therapist finally said, John, she ain't coming. She got tired enough of saying, well, how do you feel about that? And she just said, she ain't coming. So let's forget about the serendipity and the magical thinking. It's time that you're a big boy. You're 30. Why don't you make a choice? Make a choice and start again. And we're always starting again, right? Always. Always. Even if it's not a major move, change of jobs, retiring from what you used to do. But changing of archetypes is the thing that I'm most aware of now in my life. Is that who am I now? I don't want to be dragging the past with me and talk about what I used to do and keep expecting what I used to do to be part of the foundation of what I hope to achieve next. But me being willing to look at myself and say, who am I now? What archetype am I inhabiting now? And in the South, they call it, I'm wearing the grandfather coat now. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a princely lover anymore, not since 1979, which was my favorite year, but for other reasons as well. I'm not a young dad. I'm not a young anything. I'm not a mid-career. I wear the grandfather coat. I want to wear it well, with dignity and with power. Stuff to do. And I'm willing to step over that threshold and say, what now? What now? Because it's going to be some kind of adventure that I've never had before because I've never been this before, right? Didn't you just sing that in a song? But in the Karen Drucker song, who am I going to be before that I've not been before? Or something of that nature. Okay, close enough. Close enough. Close enough. And here's the last truth teaching that I'd like to reflect on, is that all of the teachers of the perennial philosophy, all of them, and including Dr. Holmes, is that, one of the real arts of living is to learn to be non-resistant to reality. To the degree that we resist reality, we will be in addiction. We will be stuck. And sometimes it will be the end. Most people don't know this, but in Hebrew, the word Egypt in the Torah, in our Old Testament, means the stuck place. That is the meaning of the word Egypt, because the word Egypt wasn't made up until fairly recently. So the writers of the Old Testament made a noun out of the stuck place. And some of the Israelites wanted to get out of the stuck place. That was the invitation of Moses. Do you want to be stuck? Do you want to be a free person, or do you want to be enslaved? And in the, I'm sorry, not the Torah. I've lost the word. The teaching is most, I'm 70 something. I've lost the word. Not the Kabbalah, not the Mishnah. What's the other one? The Babylonian, ba-da-da-da. It says that there were 40,000 Israelites that left with Moses, went to the promised land. And there were 700,000 that stayed and chose slavery. Speaks to the human condition, doesn't it? There's no boldness in that choice. There's a guarantee. There's a hard shell that as long as you're working for the abusive employer, Pharaoh, that you'll get some slop to eat. You don't have to take any chances. But could you dare to be fully human? Would you dare that? I believe that our teaching is sound in offering all of us basic information on making good decisions. If we embrace these simple truths. Simple? Are they easy? No, they're not easy. That's why I couldn't stay retired and not church, because I need to hear myself telling myself the truth. That is a requirement that my mind brain has. My soul doesn't need it. But unless I'm listening deeply and having an opportunity to check in, getting to speak on a Sunday morning is a challenge. It's a dare for any minister. Or I won't say any minister, but I'll say me. Because anytime the moment before I stand up and I say, do I mean this? Do I really mean this? And the answer is yes. Because I have proven the principle in my lifetime. And it wasn't what I started out wanting to prove by the use of the science of mind, because in the 80s, everybody was treating for a Mercedes. Am I right? Yes. No? You were advanced students. In Los Angeles, everyone was treating for a Mercedes in 1985. And once I got to realize that was a low-value aspiration, I got to ask myself, then what is a high-value aspiration for me? And it became revealed through effort, and I walked the path, and I proved the principle. As a pastoral kind of dad, I want to remind you that you are getting the information that you need to make good decisions. And I hope, and I will pray and I will participate, that one of your bold choices will be to truly bring your A game in vitalizing this community, because this is a teaching that is required. It is required as long as we are here on planet Earth. So I will thank you. I will thank Reverend Charles for allowing me the privilege of being here again. I will thank you for being here because you're here allows me to be in my mission. And so I thank you for creating that opportunity for me. I know that fellowship happens when we reach out and encourage each other on our journey. Fellowship is not coffee and cookies. Fellowship, deep fellowship, is encouraging each other on our journeys. So listen as your friends talk and ask them, how can I know the truth about that with you? And you will establish real fellowship. And finally, as I have always said, being from the South, you pray for me and I'll pray for you, because that's just what God's children do. Thank you, friends. It's beautiful to be here.